Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and thank you for joining us for another segment of Coach's Corner here on April 3rd, 2014. I appreciate you guys all tuning in every week and supporting the program. And I got a great lineup on tonight's Coach's Corner segment. We got a couple of newcomers to the program. I'm going to introduce all of them in just a second here, and I'll bring them on just a moment. But I just want to remind everybody as well that we are live from now until 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. The first hour, of course, is going to be dedicated to the Coach's Corner panel. And the second half of the program, I'm going to be interviewing a phenomenal gentleman, really. I wasn't aware of his accolades, but Mancil Davis. He's the Director of Golf at the National Hole-in-One Association. And I didn't know until I started reading through some of the research lately that he has 51 recorded, and he's in the Guinness Book of World Records, hole-in-ones in his career. He has the lead by quite a substantial margin. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about that and also about the National Hole-in-One Association as well a little bit later on in the broadcast. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget, it's live, as I said, from 6 p.m. Central Standard Time to 8 p.m., and that's on the Blog Talk Radio Network /Golf Talk Live. If you want to call in during the live broadcast anytime, you can speak to myself or the guests, and that's at area code 646-716-4667. Or you can email me some questions to ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Facebook /Golf Talk Live blog. You can like us there and post any comments, or you can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Ted and Buck CEO. And don't forget to check out the website for Golf Talk Live. That's golftalkliveblog.com. As I said, I got a great panel tonight. And first off, I'm going to introduce Scott Seifferlein, PGA Golf Guru at the Grand Rapids GolfLesson.com up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's also an author of some great books, and we're going to let him talk a little bit about that a little bit later on in the segment. And you can learn more a little bit about Scott at www.grandrapidsgolflesson.com. Also joining tonight on the panel is a newcomer, is Eric Cogorno. He's a PGA professional at the Bethlehem Golf Club and Dijulia Golf in New Hope, Pennsylvania. And rounding out the panel tonight is also another newcomer, is Brenndan Cooper. He's a certified PGA Teaching Professional at the Chuck Evans Medicus Golf Academies at Tiffany Greens Golf. And he's joining us here tonight as well. Gentlemen, welcome to Coach's Corner.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Hey, Ted, thanks.
All right, not a problem. Okay, guys, just let me sort of set the parameters here, just to remind the listening audience as well what we're going to do here on the show tonight. Every Thursday night, as you know, we have you have an opportunity to call or email your questions to the program and pick the brains of some of the best coaches and teaching pros in the business. And each week I have a different panel. We'll cover a new topic each week, plus help some of you weekend warriors out here as well. You can call in, as I said, during the live broadcast or email your questions. You can call in at 646-716-4667, or you can email the questions for this particular segment to questions.golftalklive@gmail.com, and I want to thank those that emailed their questions in for tonight. And here's essentially how the segment's going to work. Each week I'll pose some questions to the panel for discussion. I'll start the discussion and then rotate to each of the members for some general comments, and then open the floor to any additional comments throughout the evening. The segment's going to last approximately an hour, and then I'll give each of the professionals an opportunity to plug at the end anything that they want, whether it's a book or website that they want to talk about. And afterwards we'll take hopefully some live calls. But this is your opportunity to participate in the discussion, so call in anytime during the live broadcast from 6 p.m. Central to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, guys, the topic I picked for this week for Coach's Corner was sent in actually from a gentleman by the name of Phil from Birmingham, England. And essentially what he said in his email was this: he's heard some people say you should swing within yourself. And his question was, what does it mean to swing within yourself? And I'm going to start off with Scott, since he's been on the program before. But before I do, let me just say that the questions that are coming in here, I know sometimes can be a little bit generic, so we got to kind of filter it out and do the best that we can. But I think essentially what Phil's asking here, Scott, is a lot of times people are under the misconception when they want to hit the golf ball that they've got to swing until they come out of their boots. And obviously that's not the case. We know as teaching professionals that you've got to swing within yourself when you're playing. Can you talk a little bit more about that and give a little bit of an explanation to Phil over in England?
Well, Phil has a great question there, and I'm sure a lot of people have different definitions of what swinging within yourself means, so it would be interesting for him, maybe a fun game for him to ask the next person that gets that advice from what they mean by that, and they probably won't have a good answer for it, but maybe he could have some fun with that. I think a lot of people interpret what's swinging within themselves. It actually is, in my opinion, actually is not good advice to swing within yourself,
right,
because of how most people actually interpret it. Not that it's bad advice, but because of how most people interpret it. They interpret it as that they have to swing slow. And
right.
So I run into a lot of golfers that hit the ball very short because they've been told to swing within themselves. They've also been told to swing slower, that they're swinging too fast. And it's not that they're swinging too fast. It's that they're swinging out of position, out of balance, out of sequence. And then they slow down and they just hit it shorter. So swinging
right.
within yourself is more about understanding your own body's ability to maximize your speed, get in good balance positions, not necessarily positions of tour players if your body's not conditioned to be in those positions, but maximizing your own positions, your maximum balance, finding the correct stance width that works best for you. Some people benefit more from a narrow stance, others from a slightly wider stance. But whatever stance width, whatever setup positions give you maximum balance and allow you to swing as fast as you possibly can without falling over.
Right. And that's a great point. You know, there is so many interpretations to it, but, you know, I think really, you know, you have to understand your body and how it works to really understand this. And let me give you an example. There's a lot of different swings on the tour, obviously, and I'm not talking about positions, but, you know, from some of the days in the past, we had people like Nick Price, who was had a very fast pace compared to, say, a Freddie Couples. They're both swinging, can both generate a lot of club head speed, but two uniquely different golf swings. And I think you're right, Scott. You hit it right on the head. I think a lot of people misunderstand and think they have to slow it down so much, and what ends up happening is they give up a lot of distance as a result of that.
Exactly, and you have two good examples there. So if you ask most people who swings faster, Nick Price or Fred Couples, they're almost always going to say Nick Price, but actually Fred Couples swings faster than Nick Price.
Exactly, but the eye can be deceiving. So that's one of the reasons why I picked this. I mean, it was very kind of a generic, and there's a lot of different possibilities, but I wanted to pick that because I think that there is a lot of misconception, and obviously, Scott, you've experienced that in your years as a professional with a lot of your students. Eric, do you want to share some thoughts with that and see if you can help Phil as well understand swing within yourself a little bit better?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would echo a lot of what Scott said. The conversations I have with people who I have that sort of conversation in person go sort of the same way. I mean, you know, guys on PGA Tour swinging their drives 110, 115 miles an hour. I see a lot of guys swinging the club not even close to that. You know, your average golfer swings at, 90 miles an hour with the driver?
Yeah,
if that. And so it's I think you have to differentiate speed versus what you want to call it, tempo or rhythm, is a huge thing. I think a lot of it just happens because people think that they should hit the ball farther than they really do. I see that all the time. We're fortunate enough to have a launch monitor where we're at, and it can give you specifics in terms of how far you are hitting the ball, and people are generally shocked. Sometimes I don't tell them as a little bit of an ego boost, but people don't hit the ball nearly as far as they think, and you know, if you're swinging the club at that speed, the ball can only go so far. So I think a lot of the swinging within yourself or people swinging too hard and not staying in balance comes from the fact that they think they should hit it farther than they really do.
Right, and let me just add to that. I think what a lot of it is, you know, I think one of the biggest mistakes that most amateurs make is when they're watching, you know, some of their favorite players on tour, and they hear some of the numbers that are coming out by the announcers. You know, Bubba Watson, you know, hit 330-yard drives and so on and so forth. And I think the only way that they're going to be able to even come close to that is to muscle it out there. So a lot of times they get out of their rhythm and out of their tempo and sort of swing for the hills. And I think that's how I really kind of interpret swinging within yourself. Is I think that more often than not, people sort of speed up their natural. Everybody has a natural rhythm, and I think that you have to sort of go with that and tailor and customize your swing around that. And I think if you tried, as I gave the examples earlier, I mean, Freddie probably couldn't speed up his tempo or his rhythm to say to a Nick Price speed or rhythm, and conversely, Nick probably couldn't slow it down the way Freddie does. But as Scott pointed out, looks can be deceiving, and Freddie actually has a much faster swing than Nick does. And I think what happens is a lot of times, as I said, people watching their favorite tour players see and hear the stats and numbers being put out there and think that the way that they've got to do it is they've got to really grip it and rip it, and that's not always the best case. Brenndan, I'm going to let you jump in here and share any other thoughts that you might have, or are you pretty much on the same page as the other two?
No, I think what everybody said so far. I mean, it's definitely you have the same thoughts and opinions. It is kind of a tricky question to answer, just because there's so many angles that you can look at it from. But totally agree with what everybody's saying. Especially as far as Ted, like you were saying earlier about what people when they're watching golf on TV and they see the distances that they're hitting the ball and people and players are thinking, well, if they can do it, I can do it because, I'm stronger. Mm-hmm. And, more times than not, from, what I've seen a lot of times is, people that do try to, step on it or get a little bit extra yardage. I mean, more times, they're just, instead of, swinging, the body and the club together, they're letting the club outrace their body, and then they're just throwing the club head at it. And so now, the club's, accelerating at the wrong point in time in the swing. So, I think that, more times than not, if you can get a player to understand, look, when you, swing within yourself, if you can, store the power and release it a little bit, later in the swing, that's going to generate power, and it's really not going to be, an extra effort on the player's part to do that.
Well said. Great comments. And Phil, I over in England, I know you're probably not tuning in live because I'm not sure of the time change, but I'm sure it's probably either in the wee hours of the morning or very, very late in the evening, so you may not be tuning in live, but I know you'll be tuning in a little bit later on the recorded version and be able to get your answers, hear your answers there. But thanks for your question. Guys, we're going to move on to some other questions here that come into the Coach's Corner panel. And the first one here is from Derek from Burlington, Vermont. And he writes in, good evening. He says, I'm a 15 handicapper and hit the ball pretty well. My area of difficulty is with greenside bunkers, particularly shots that have an uneven lie. An example he gives, whether the ball is below or above the feet. Do you have any tips on how to handle these shots? And Scott, I'm going to start, if it's okay, I'm going to start again with you. Essentially what Derek is talking about is we obviously all can't get a perfect lie in the bunker, a nice even lie. Sometimes we deal with the ball being well above the feet or sometimes below the feet. So let's just see if we can give them some tips that can help them to handle those shots. Let's start with ball above the feet first.
Sure. The first most important thing is that Derek left out was the pertinent information of what kind of bunkers he's playing out of. And so a typical northern course bunkers, especially this time of year, are wet and very firm sand. There's usually not a lot of sand in them. So in that case, the insight to apply is much different than if you're in real soft, full sand type bunkers. Mm-hmm. That's kind of important to know there. Now, going back to, you said it was an uphill lie, was the first part of that question?
Ball above the feet, yeah. Ball above the feet.
Ball
above
the
Yeah.
So with the ball above the feet, it's going to be closer to you. So I like to grip down and get into a position. I also like to get the hands a little bit lower, so I grip down quite a bit. I get the hands a little bit lower because when the ball is above the feet, the toe will tend to dig into the sand. And if the sand is firm, I'm okay with that. I want to have a little bit of that dig, so I get some sand between the club face and the golf ball. If the sand is softer, I want to make sure that my hands are a little lower. That raises the toe up some, puts the club head in a more upright position where the heel is closer to the ground than the toe. And then that helps me utilize the bounce, which is necessary in the softer sand. If I dig in the softer sand, there's going to be too much sand between the club face and the ball, so I'm going to leave the ball in the bunker. And if I have bounce in harder sand, then there's not going to be enough sand between the club face and the ball is going to fly over the green and probably into the next bunker or into Mr. Havocamp's backyard. And I don't want any kind of result like that.
That's well said. What are some, Eric, I want to, so that we're not getting too repetitive on this, Eric, I want to bring you on let's talk about ball above the feet. What are some common things in that, again, we can help Derek? And again, guys, keep in mind that, a lot of the people, when they're emailing these questions in, don't always give us, all of the information. So we have to sort of sift out, pardon the expression, but sift through the sand and take out some of the pebbles and whatnot and sort of make the best effort and sort of give them a well-rounded. But let's take, Eric, if we can, the ball above the feet scenario. What are some common things that we see the average high handicappers doing that's wrong, and sort of incorporate that with what Scott was just talking about?
Sure, yeah, and I think first, I think Scott covered a lot of things there that was a really good answer. What a lot of common people do, and the other thing too is, listen, ball above your feet, ball below your feet in a bunker or uphill or downhill lie is difficult. I mean, that's difficult for me, you, Tiger Woods, anybody else. So this is for a handicap player. This is get out of the bunker or get onto the green type of deal. A lot of the setup stuff he covered. I mean, you're closer to the ball, gripping down on the club. The other thing I would add would be ball above your feet. Just like if the ball was above your feet, in a fairway or in the rough, would tend to go left. So maybe you would aim a little bit more to the right than what you would normally do. The other thing I would add is, since the ball is above your feet, maybe think about swinging the club a little flatter and more around your body as compared to more up and down. And quite frankly, Ted, the issues that I see with someone ball above their feet would be the same in a bunker as I see from any lie. People, I think, are not very good at hitting the sand where they want to hit it. That would sort of be my first thing I would work on, uphill, downhill, sidehill, would be, can you draw a line in the sand and use the bounce of the club to hit that line? Because if you can't do that, sort of everything else to me is very much secondary. So can you hit where you want to hit, and then make all the adjustments afterwards is what I would say.
Well said as well. And Brenndan, obviously, we've kind of covered most of that. What I want to do is sort of change it up just a little bit. Brenndan, I'm going to, as I say, throw you under the bus. I'm going to let you talk about the ball below the feet, and let's attack that one, because I think the other two pretty much covered ball above the feet. But let's say we've now got a similar scenario, but this time, and we'll say that just to clarify Derek's question here a little bit, the ball's below the feet and you're outside of the bunker, so you're actually standing outside of the bunker and now have to address it. You don't have a shot otherwise. So how would you advise Derek to sort of handle a shot like that?
Well, I mean, first of all, if he can, try to get as much length on, you can on the club. I mean, you may have to, if he's a right-handed player, then, his left hand, you want to try to get as much length out of the golf club as you can, for one, just so you can get down to it as best you can. And, two, I prefer to see some of my players in that type of situation try to have more of an upright swing. It's going to be not really a chop type of, sensation, but, definitely on a steeper angle to try to get the club to perform the way it's designed. But, that definitely, I think, the first thing is, making sure you try to maximize the length of the club. I mean, even if part of your left hand is off the top part of the grip by, a half inch or so off the end there. And then, just try to, feel a little bit more of a steeper plane, steeper angle coming in. And, again, what was mentioned earlier, just try to find, a spot there, slightly behind the ball if you can. Just try to let the sand carry it out. And, it's another situation where, you're not necessarily trying to, knock it 5 feet, 2 feet from the hole. You're just trying to get it on the green in that situation, or, to where you got to putt at it. But, a lot of times players, will have a tendency, it seems like they think they can, pull off the impossible, where more times than not they're better off just, looking, elsewhere instead of maybe at the pin, maybe the fat side of the green, give themselves a chance to roll a putt in.
Right, and I think you're right on the money there. I think great answers, guys, all the way around. By the way, I think one of the things that I've seen, throughout my time is, and you raised a very valid point, Brenndan, is this. The tour players have a little bit of advantage that they have the ability to, even though it's difficult shots for them, they've done these, they've practiced these so many times and understand how the ball is going to react, and they've dealt with different types of sand, as Scott had mentioned in the beginning, that they're able to be a little bit more aggressive in their shots. I think for the high handicappers, and I'm assuming that, certainly Derek being a 15 handicapper, he's certainly a decent player, but I think you need to sort of aim more for the fat side of the green and give yourself a better opportunity to, roll a putt, as you said, Brenndan, because I think a lot of times, even if the pin is short, where you are close to where the bunker is, sometimes it's better to aim a little bit away from that, because more often than not, you're going to add an additional anxiety and pressure to yourself trying to get that ball close. So optimally, you want to get the ball out on the green and then go from there with your putter. And just to sort of encapsulate the two differences here, as you all have indicated, with the ball above the feet, it's more of, and I equate this with baseball. When the ball is above your feet like that, you want to have certainly a flatter swing, much more like a baseball swing, more around your body as opposed to up and down. Whereas conversely, where the situation in the latter end of it, where the ball is below your feet, it's going to be more of an up and down swing. And I remember doing that particular ball below your feet bunker shot on one of the videos that I did. And let me tell you, it's tough because you've got to widen your base. You've got to bring your center of gravity down in some cases quite a ways. And I had the ball was, I think, almost 2 feet, foot and a half below me, and it was very difficult to execute that shot. So even for some of the better players. So Derek, I hope that this has helped you to understand the differences between these types of bunker shots. And as the gentlemen have all said, put some thought into it. Choke down on the ball when it's above your feet, stand a little bit taller and swing a little more around your body. And conversely, with the ball below your feet, you want to get your center of gravity down a little bit, widen your stance, and be more of an upright type of swing where you're coming down, because you're not going to be able to hit the ball or you blade the ball if you try to go around your body too much. So great advice for Derek up in Vermont, and I'm sure he's going to be eager to have the snow melt and get out and play a little bit more. I'm sure it's pretty much melted now. But great answers, guys. I appreciate helping Derek out in Burlington, Vermont. Our next one is actually from overseas. His name is Rico from Spain. And here's his. Again, I don't know the age. Some of these guys don't include that, but I'm going to gather that he's probably a little bit older. But he says he plays about twice a week. But his tee shots don't go very far. He lacks power with his driver. He wants to know if there are any drills on how to increase his distance. Eric, let's start with you this time.
Sure. So let's talk about what makes the ball go far. So if we're going to assume that he's an older gentleman, he plays twice a week, so swing speed. If you want to hit the ball farther, you have to swing the club faster. That's one thing. There's tons of drills that you could easily find online to maximize your speed depending upon whatever you need to work on. So I would say swinging the club fast would be one. Two would be centerness of contact. So a lot of people I see don't hit the ball anywhere near with a driver, anywhere near the center of the club face, like not even close. That's a big deal. Centerness of contact. The other thing I see a lot in terms of getting people distance, so let's assume he's not going to swing any faster. He has the swing he has. How can he use his swing and hit it farther? Another thing I'm going to sort of assume, but maybe I shouldn't, would be club fitting. how much loft does he have on his driver? Does he have enough loft? Is the shaft in the driver the shaft that he should have? Huge deals there. And then sort of angle of attack would be my next thing. Is the ball forward enough in your stance, and are you catching it a little bit on the upswing as compared to on the downswing? So I would say swing speed, hitting it in the center of the club face, trying to catch it on the way up instead of on the way down, and making sure you have enough loft on the driver. And the other thing, too, I see a ton of, Ted, is the drivers that come out that are 46 inches, 46 and a half inches are way too long for a lot of people. I don't know how tall or what he looks like, but I have a lot of people who need to cut their drivers down, would be another thing.
Well said. Brenndan, do you want to share your thoughts on that as well for Rico in Spain?
I think Eric hit the nail on the head there with everything he talked about. I think probably the only thing that I would, as far as just a recommended drill would be, it's pretty basic, and it's not a groundbreaking drill, but one thing he could do is just take his driver and flip it around to where he actually grips it on the club head part of the shaft, and then so you're actually swinging the grip end, and take your stance and swing it, and just see where the loudest part of the swoosh is, and to help him maybe get up a little bit more swing speed, in his swing, to try to get that swoosh, going more towards the ball or just past the ball, and that might help him out a little bit. But I think those other answers were spot on.
Right. And I think, Eric, you raised a valid point about, getting tested for equipment, make sure that he's using proper equipment. I think a common thing as well is a lot of people are playing with the wrong length of driver, but also maybe the wrong shaft. If he's an older player and he's playing with a stiffer shaft still, a lot of times that's going to affect his distance as well, because he can't bring the club head into the ball fast enough. He doesn't generate enough speed to utilize the benefits of a stiffer shaft. So that's something that needs to. Scott, you want to wrap this one up and see if I know you've got some great answers in the wings there, and help Rico over in Spain hit his driver a little bit further.
Yes, Rico's going to have some fun with this, hitting the ball farther, and some really good points made already, especially centerness of contact is big when you're looking to add some distance. When I'm working with a client on adding distance, I look at where their contact point is. If they have some decent contact and some decent fundamentals in place where the ball's reasonably in play, I go right into speed and helping them understand how to create speed and the psychology of allowing themselves to create speed, because a lot of people have fear of speed. Their friends have told them to slow down for so long that they have this fear. So we talk about it's okay to swing fast. The world won't end when you swing fast. You want to have some features in place that allow you to swing fast with less risk. So we look at some of those options too, and we blend in the fundamentals to lower the risk factor so that they have the freedom to swing faster. But one student a couple of years ago, it was 2010 now, I believe, about 4 years ago, and he came out to me and he was hitting his 4-iron about 150 yards. And I took him through some speed drills. I had a speed stick at the time, and his swing speed wasn't all that fast, but he had some pretty good motion. I was actually surprised how good his motion was. His path was good. His face angles were pretty good. And I just said, why don't you swing this as fast as you can? Don't worry about control. In fact, swing it without control. Just show me how you can swing as fast as you can. And, of course, he tried to swing as fast as he could, and he had complete control because he had a big fear of actually losing control. But he started to pick up some speed, and then we hit a few balls, and he was all of a sudden hitting his 4-iron 170 yards. And this is when it occurred to me that I had to do some psychology work, because he turned to me and he said, that's cool, but I could never do that. My friends would not allow me to swing that fast. And I was like, oh, my gosh. There's a huge psychology factor going on here. And so we worked over a year on reminding him to swing faster until it finally sunk in, and he started to lose that fear of his friends telling him he couldn't swing that fast. And then just this last year, I had another guy come out with his driver going about 220 yards, and he had some decent fundamentals in place, but he had a lot of right-hand blockage in the backswing, meaning that there was a lot of tension and it wouldn't hinge properly. Yep. And so he freed up his right hand to hinge a little bit, not to lift the club at all and intentionally hinge, but just to allow the weight of the club to hinge it for him. And he started to feel some whip action coming through, and he's like, there's no way I can swing this fast. I won't have control. And I said, okay, well, go ahead and hit a few balls without control. Who cares where it goes? And he hit 3 straight as he had hit any other ball. He said, wow. So in a lot of cases, golfers don't realize they can allow themselves to swing faster than they do. They have such a fear of swinging fast that it's going to cause them to lose control. But as long as they have some decent fundamentals in place, it's actually not that hard. So hopefully
let me just
free up and swing and have the freedom and the confidence and the fearlessness to go out there and swing fast.
And I would say, Rico, if you're, again, he being overseas, he may not be tuning in live tonight, but when you listen to this broadcast at a later point, I would say probably the number one thing, Rico, is stop listening to your buddies and get out and get some great instruction from one of your local teacher professionals in the area and get him to help you directly with that, and stop listening to your buddies in your foursome, because they're obviously trying to beat you and win some money. So, but the other thing too is I think that one of the things that I didn't hear mentioned, and again, I realize that, you know, it can be difficult when you're not getting all the facts and so forth here. But one of the things, too, I see quite commonly is not completing the backswing. A lot of, some of the high handicappers particularly will kind of have this herky-jerky type swing where, they'll go back and they're trying to, generate so much power, and they're whipping it forward before it really has a chance to get a full backswing. And so a lot of times they're not really utilizing the flexibility that they have and the momentum that they can generate by making that full backswing. And, there's a lot of other great drills that you can do. One of the drills that's been around for a long, long time and don't necessarily need to use your driver, but it'll certainly benefit your driver, is just to, say, take a 6-iron and line up about 4 or 5 balls in a row, and just try to hit them initially, say, about 100 yards. So obviously you're going to swing a little bit slower and so forth. And gradually, as you get through, set up another 5 balls and hit them a little further, swing a little bit faster, and work your way up to hitting it full distance. And what that'll do is it'll give you an idea and feel of how to swing the club to get the different distances, and it'll help you speed up and realize that as you're speeding up, you're going to create more distance with that club. But that's a great drill as well to help with that transition, because a lot of players, as I said, if they've got that sort of herky-jerky type motion where they're whipping it into their backswing, they're not really completing and making a full backswing, and then they're trying to whip it down into the club, into the ball rather. And a lot of times they're not getting the full utilization of the club. And again, also if that shaft is not properly flexed for that particular player, they're going to lose some distance as well. So, Rico, I hope that those tips will help you, and we'd certainly love to hear back in a follow-up email from you after you've taken them to the practice range. I got a great one here, guys, and I'm going to let Brenndan, I'm going to put him under the bus again and let him start off on this one here. And Brenndan, Dan from Shreveport, Louisiana, wrote in. He said, I play every week in a foursome with my friends. We're all pretty much similar in our abilities. But for some reason, I ended last season hitting a lot of push hooks. Can you help me figure out what I'm doing wrong? And obviously, again, we're not being able to see the players, in video and whatnot, so we have to sort of take it. But what are some of the common things, Brenndan, that a lot of players do that cause them to hit that push hook?
Well, I mean, with the push and the hook there, I mean, it's to me, it's more of a trying to get an idea of what, again, it's difficult to answer without necessarily seeing the player, but,
sure.
Obviously, it's with the path of the club and the way the face angle is at impact, it's something's not meshing there. So, it would be, I would say, probably to try to tone down that overhook a little bit is, everybody's, told their whole life, swing it inside to out, more out to right field, where, with in this particular situation, we may try to get him to feel like he's actually, coming in a little bit not so shallow, maybe a little bit more on a steeper angle, and a little bit less out to right field, if you will. Again, it's difficult to say, but just try to work on the path there, maybe try to tone that overdraw down, and it almost get the feeling like you're trying to cut across it just a little bit. That would be right. My recommendation is just try to get that feeling of instead of coming in to out, maybe try to get more out to in, and right. I don't think I would worry. And again, it's difficult. Again, I mean, we right. The question and everything, but I don't know if I would mess with the face too much, but I would think I'd probably worry more about the path, without really getting to see it.
Well, and I think too, just to add to that, you're right on the money. A lot of times, what ends up happening is once he gets on the right path, he might end up coming out with a nice draw, and not
yeah, exactly. I think you're just trying to tone it down some, based on, more right. times than not, an overdraw. You're just trying to, most amateurs, want the draw. They love the draw, and the last thing you want to do is necessarily take the whole thing out, but you definitely want to, take the overdraw out, and try to keep it on the golf course. And I think definitely try to get that feel of, that golf club coming in a little bit more in the opposite direction, if you will. And it's going to be, changing a little bit of the sequence, or, getting that feeling of coming on a little bit of a steeper plane, and, almost like he's coming across it just a little bit, which, in his mind, that's probably what it will feel like. It'll feel like he's, trying to hit a 50-yard cutter out of there, but, it's going to be, it'll probably still be more times than not, slightly in to out, but not near what it probably is now.
Right. Scott, you want to comment on that as well?
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, I'm sure between Eric, Brenndan, and I, we could have a 3-hour seminar on this topic. Bring in all the TrackMan data and everything from context standpoint. But I don't use TrackMan, so without having the actual data, I would make the assumption that his path was right of his club face, and that his club face was actually probably open. And then the more that he tries to open his club face, the more he'll actually hook it, because the club face set will encourage the right hand to be underneath, assuming he's right-handed, or left-handed if he's left-handed, in the grip position. Right. And it'll drop the right, or the trail arm, I should say, it'll drop it in closer to his body with the lead arm out on the more than the top side. And it'll close his shoulders, or to the right for a right-handed player, or left for a left-handed player. And it'll set up all these features that create the path that he's trying to fight against. It'll create all those setup features create a path that cause the path to be right of the club face if that's a right-handed player, and left of the club face as a left-handed player. So then the ball is going to spin in the opposite direction. And so he's going to try and get the club face more open, most likely. If he's a right-handed player, that'd be more to the right, or a left-handed player, that's more to the left. But if he doesn't change the path in relation to that club face, the ball is still going to hook.
Right. Right. Well said. And obviously, in more often than not, in a scenario like this, you're dealing with really a couple of factors. It's not, obviously the club face, it can be a factor, and obviously the path is definitely a factor. But a lot of times, too, more often, and I suspect that this is what Dan started doing. It happens a lot with amateurs, as he indicated earlier in the email, that he and his foursome are pretty much on the same level, but for some reason his game sort of went south, no pun intended, and now he's trying to figure out what he's doing wrong. And I suspect what happens is when you're playing, competitive golf with your foursome, a lot of times to get an advantage, somebody wants to try and sort of step out of the box. They maybe want to hit it a little further, hit it a little bit more, and they start experimenting with their swing. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll take maybe a stronger grip, let's say as an example, and they'll try to step on it a little bit more. And ultimately what ends up happening is with that stronger grip, it's either going to shut down the club face a little more than they'd like, and instead of that nice little baby draw that you're getting, you're now shutting down the face and hooking the ball. And if you're doing that, a lot of times if you're making changes to your traditional setup and not sure
on how to compensate for those changes, a lot of times what happens, as Brenndan had indicated, is you're dropping more from the inside to out. And again, you're also resulting in that push hook. So now you not only have a closed club face, but you're coming from an inside, a stronger inside-out path instead of straight down the line. And so I expect there's a lot of things, and I would gather, Dan, if you're tuning into the program tonight, that's probably some of the things that you're doing is you're trying to get that competitive advantage over your buddies. And I would say that what you need to do is visit your local PGA Teaching Professional and get them to take a look, get them to videotape your swing, take a look at it, and if you've had one done in the past when you were hitting a little bit better, and get them to do a comparison between the two, and you should get an idea of where things have changed and from last year. And Eric, is there anything that you want to add on this that you can see from your perspective, some things that you've seen with your students?
Yeah, definitely. So this, ironically enough, I just posted something about this not too long ago. As Scott said, this is something we could go on and on and on in terms of what the club does to cause us, what your body's doing to cause us. But here's what I would say. This is Dan. Dan is his name, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, Dan from Shreveport, Louisiana.
So here's how I would do it, and I'll be a little more specific than I was before. I would take your the reasons for your hook is what was mentioned. You essentially have a path that's too far to the right and a club face that's left of where that path is, so it's close to your path but open to the target. So for whatever reason that you do that, assuming you have some sort of normal grip, here's what I would do. I would take a towel, your golf towel, fold it up to where it's about like an inch or two high. I would put it about a grip's length behind the golf ball and a little bit to the inside of it. So take your golf towel, fold it up a couple times, put it about a grip's length, so maybe 6 to 8 inches behind the ball and a little bit inside of it. That's going to help with the shallow part. The next thing we do, and the shallow hook, push hook miss is a good player's problem, right? So this is something that should be relatively easy for you to fix. Now, we have range buckets at our range that I'm at. I don't know if he has that there, but the nice thing about a range bucket is it's planted on the side. So on top of the towel, sort of even with your right foot from face on and sort of just inside the shaft plane, you need to have an object between your right foot and the ball to prevent you from swinging to the inside.
Right. The
towel part will take care of the shallowness. You can even fold a towel up and just put it on the inside part of the ball just so you have just enough room for the club to get through. And as Brenndan said, it's going to feel sort of steep and over the top to get started, but if you're too shallow and to the right, that's exactly what you need. I think if you put an object there, I see with 99 out of 100 people get that sensation pretty quickly. So that's what I would do.
Sounds good. Great answers, guys. And again, just keep in mind that we're trying to really give some general advice here to some of these amateurs out here. And I realize we don't have all of the facts in front of us, so it's a little bit difficult sometimes to diagnose without seeing it. But really, what the purpose of this Coach's Corner is just to give the audience a little bit of insight and knowledge of some of the things that they can either go back to their professional if they're working with one. But just to give them an idea of some things to be looking for, because you have to remember, in our line of work, we're the eyes and the ears really in the golf industry. We see what's going on and we hear what the students are saying to us, and then from that we extrapolate what we feel is the best method or the best way to handle that. And a lot of these amateurs out there, they don't understand what to look for, and this extra set of eyes, and in this case 6 eyes tonight, no, actually take that back. 8 eyes are able to sort of put that together for them and help them out with their game. So some great answers, guys. And I want to take one just to not to be gender biased. Jillian from Boston, Massachusetts wrote in. And she's got a great scenario here, one we haven't had before on the Coach's Corner. And here's her scenario. Generally hits it straight down the middle. Good for you. Not very long, but straight. On occasion, I hit into the rough, hence my problem. I struggle playing out of the rough, and I'm not sure what to do. On the longer shots, I use my fairway wood or sometimes my hybrids on these shots, but don't always get good results. Can you give me some tips on how to play out of the rough? And, Scott, I'm going to go back to you on this one. This is Jillian from Boston, having a little difficulty getting out of the rough.
Yeah, play winter rules. Bump it up a little bit. I mean, it's not the U.S. Open here we're talking about, so bump it up a little bit. It sounds like if anything, she could also add a little bit of strength conditioning to her lead, forearm, and wrist.
Yep.
So if she's right-handed, that would be left side. Strengthen that left side so you can drive through that grass a little bit better. Those are a couple things that I would implement.
Yeah, I like the winter rules. I think that's a good idea. I think generally, you know, a lot of people that don't play, and again, I'm not sure how often she plays, but certainly some strength training could help. But also, too, a lot of people don't understand what happens with the ball, and when hitting out of the rough, it's not like hitting from a nice flat, short grass fairway. And a lot of times they don't give it enough strength and effort hitting through the ball out of the rough, and they figure it's the same shot. And a lot of times, of course, we know what happens. Brenndan, do you want to expand a little bit on that? Is there some things that you in your experience that you've seen that some of the players out there and that maybe can help Jillian?
Yeah, I think the first thing is one, definitely make sure that you are attempting to use the right club. She's I think I heard you say, with the fairway woods and hybrids. I mean, it's depending on the lie of the golf ball.
Right.
If it's if half the ball or more than half the ball is covered in the deep grass, then it's going to be pretty difficult to get a fairway wood or hybrid through most rough. And I don't really. Again, we don't know the actual type of grass or what have you, but
right.
If you have a terrible lie and you're trying to hit a fairway wood or hybrid out of there, I would probably recommend going to a mid to a short iron just to get the ball back in play. Kind of what we talked about earlier on the side hill bunker shot. Sometimes players want to try to do the impossible, where more times than not it's best just to get it somewhere out of danger and then play on in from there. But if the lie is decent, if you can see most of the ball. A couple little setup changes that I would recommend would be, maybe choke down on it about, a half inch to an inch, maybe stand just a little bit closer to it. And what that's going to do is that's going to, kind of let you swing in a little bit steeper to the ball and try to, keep the grass from grabbing the club so quickly, just kind of change your angle of attack. So, that would be the couple little things I would recommend there.
Great points. And let me just add this as well, and something that I picked up from the question. Right from the very first, sentence in her email, she mentions, that she hits it straight down the middle, but not very long, but it's certainly straight. So obviously she can make good contact with the ball and is able to hit it straight, but doesn't hit it a lot of distance. So my first observation would be, even though I know traditionally most women play from more forward tees than the average guy does, my concern would be why are you pulling out a fairway wood or even a hybrid? That to me would signify that you're trying to go for it. And if you're not a very long hitter, it's kind of a little redundant to be doing that. I would go with what was suggested earlier and maybe take out an iron, maybe a middle iron or even say an 8 iron. And again, depending on the lie, because a lot of cases too, if you don't have that nice, if the ball's not sitting up in the rough a little bit, depending on whether it's in the first cut or in thick rough, you need to make good contact, of course, or as best you can with the ball. And a lot of times, trying to hit a fairway wood or a hybrid out of there with a lot of grass behind it, you're not going to make good contact first off, and the ball's either just going to trickle on forward or is going to go off in a different direction. So I would, in my opinion, I would try to take an iron and come at the ball a little more steep if it's in deep rough, and just to get that ball to pop out, and you're likely going to get better distance. But my observation on this is if she's not a long hitter to begin with, she doesn't really need to be hitting a fairway wood or even a hybrid out of that rough. Just get it back into play. I think you said, Brenndan, was a good observation as well. Eric, do you have anything to add on this as well? Any suggestions for Jillian?
I would mimic exactly what you said. A fairway wood out of the rough is difficult for me to do, and I play golf all the time. And secondly, A lot of the women that I see that struggle out of the rough, like you said, they are too shallow, and so she would need to be maybe a little bit steeper. But I think everyone covered that pretty well.
Perfect. Again, some great answers.
Ted,
sorry?
If I could add,
yeah, Scott,
if I could add, I really like what Brenndan said about gripping lower on the club, because a lot of golfers think you really have to dig down deep into the grass, and if you're going to come steep and digging down deep, the results are surprisingly not as good as you would think to get that ball out of the rough. I find a lot of golfers, when they don't go down quite as deep into the rough, they can still make some pretty good contact on the ball, catch a little less grass. So I like the how he highlighted standing closer to the ball with the grip a little bit lower so that the club isn't quite as long. Then they're going to catch less grass and a little cleaner contact.
Some great points there, and Scott, I appreciate your final thought on it. And just remember, I think for those that are tuning into the program here, one thing that you have to remember, and I think we've all experienced this, and it's great to fantasize a little bit that you're playing out on the PGA or the LPGA Tour or what have you, and it's great to visualize some of these terrific shots that you're seeing. But keep in mind that these players are playing in and out every week, and they're practicing hours and hours on end, and even some of the best players in the world are going to from time to time have difficulty with some of these shots. So when you're trying to do something that even the pros who play day in, day out every week have difficulty with, then you have to be realistic to your abilities and say, okay, maybe taking that fairway wood out of that rough is not my best option. And this is where your course management, this is where why players like Nicklaus and of course, in more modern times, Tiger Woods have become such phenomenal players, is because they were able to think their way around the golf course. They didn't do it because they had specific clubs and so forth. They play with the same 14 clubs in their bag as you do. But the difference is that they know how to think their way out of a situation like this. And so you have to be realistic with your abilities. And if you're, as I said earlier, if you're not if you don't hit the ball very hard and don't have a lot of maybe forward arm strength like Scott had suggested earlier, there are some things that you can do to change that are going to yield you some better results. So those are things to keep in mind the next time you go out and play. And I always say this, and I emphasize this every program, don't try to do these things while you're out in the golf course. Do them at the practice range, work on these different things, and then once you've got them down pat, then you can try them when you're out in the golf course. But don't start tinkering around with your swing or things like that when you're out playing in a round of golf, because you're just going to turn maybe a decent round into a miserable round, and then you're going to hate yourself after. So great answers, guys, on that question. And I got another question here from Jerry from good old San Francisco, California. And this is really a wind question here. He says he plays a lot of open or link style courses, therefore wind becomes a factor many times in my round. Do you have any suggestions or tips on how to keep the ball down? Eric, let's start with you. We'll throw you under the bus first here and get some tips here for Jerry out in San Francisco.
Sure. So in a literal sense, what determines how high or low the ball goes? So if you want to hit the ball lower, there's two big things. One is more important than the other. The first is whatever loft you present to the ball. So if you were going to hit the ball higher, you were going to have more loft, right? If you're going to hit the ball lower, you would want to have less loft. At impact, less loft. So that's number one. The second thing would be how much or how little you hit down on the ball. So, again, in a literal sense, the more you would hit down on a ball, everything else equal, the lower it would launch. The less you hit down on a ball, the higher it would launch. So I would say two things. I would say whatever club you want to use, you need less loft, needs to be de-lofted. That could be ball back in your stance, so that could be hands ahead, and there needs to be more down on the ball, which could be the same thing. Now that's in a literal sense. Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind, I would say, would be how much the ball is going to spin if it's windy, especially if you're hitting into the wind, and with swing speed. So I would take more club and swing easier rather than take less club and swing harder, but while doing that, I would be hit more down on the golf ball with less loft, probably taking more club and swinging a little bit easier so that the ball is not spinning as much into the wind. That's where I would start.
Very good. Brenndan, do you want to add some thoughts here?
I think Eric did a great job on that. Especially when players do get in the wind's in their face, they do have a tendency to, what I've noticed, to want to swing a little bit harder, and and that can add definitely quite a bit of the spin rate, and then you start getting the balloon factor in the ball, and I would rather see a player either move the ball back and almost take an abbreviated follow through, just so that they can really try to make sure that they are getting de-lofting the club as much as possible, and just trying to keep the spin rate down and almost pierce it through the wind a little bit. So instead of taking your normal swing per se, and even if you do change the ball position, sometimes having a full follow through, they can really, you just really start getting that balloon factor. So maybe just abbreviating the follow through a little bit, trying to keep the shaft lean and de-lofting the club, and that should help keep the rate down a little bit and keep just a little bit lower.
Great as well. And Scott, I want to change it up just a little bit so that we're not getting too repetitive here. Let's take this from a little different perspective. I mean, obviously, both the other gentlemen have given some great advice on how to handle when you're playing and the wind's sort of coming at you. But let's take it from a different perspective. There's obviously other conditions out there. Number one, wind coming from behind you. You want to maybe capitalize on that. But also you've got a situation where you've got wind coming from either side. Let's use this as an example and assume that Jerry in San Francisco is a right-handed player. So obviously he's got the wind coming at his back, or maybe he's got it coming from his left side and right side. So what are some things that he needs to guard against to be able to play and be an effective wind player, Scott?
Well, it depends on what his A shot is, or his most comfortable shot. Is it a fade, or is it a draw? And if he's comfortable drawing it into the wind, that's a nice play to have, because you can basically stand your ball up on the line and draw it just a little bit, and it'll hold that line. And then it'll come down and it'll land very soft. When you're riding the wind, the ball doesn't spin as well when it lands on the green in general, so it's tougher to control your run out when it hits the green. Did you give a handicap for Jerry?
No, he didn't. No, like I said, most of the questions that come in, unfortunately, they don't give me always a lot of information, so it doesn't have a handicap. But I would assume if he's asking, about wind conditions and that I'm going to guess he's a fairly high handicap player. Most of the better players usually by that time, if they're getting down to a 5 and better, they're handling wind pretty well. So
right.
They're not getting down to a 5. But go ahead.
So one of the things that I like to do in wind is really make sure that I hit the ball solid. I mean, that's easier said than done, obviously. But the more solid you hit it, the less the wind will affect it. I mean, you can have a pretty good wind going sideways, and if you hit the ball solid, it's not going to move a whole lot.
Right.
And so that's priority. But I'm going to throw something at him that he's probably going to go, wow, I've never heard anything like that before. What I like to do, and what I like to have some of my clients do when it's windy, is to actually have them decelerate. Now, here's what I mean by that. Most golfers have been told so long, and it's been drilled into their head that they have to accelerate, that they tend to accelerate with their trail hand scooping through the impact zone. And that creates extra spin on the ball upward and side spin, depending on the face angle in relation to the path. So then they end up going all over the place, and the wind just dominates their golf ball. And when you have a feel of deceleration, it goes along with Brenndan suggested a shorter follow-through. A lot of golfers have struggled with that shorter follow-through because they've been told so long to accelerate. So now they're trying to accelerate and have a short follow-through, which creates a lot of tension. So I like to have that shorter follow-through by moving the handle through the impact zone ahead of the club head and feeling a deceleration through impact, and that the club is not accelerating through impact. The handle's moving through, so there's still technically acceleration, but I'm not feeling any forced acceleration. That helps launch the ball a little bit lower. It helps hit it a little bit more solid. It helps keep the side spin off the ball, and it helps me control my shots into the wind. So I think that'll kind of blow his mind a little bit, because he's probably been told to accelerate forever. And now all of a sudden I'm saying that you don't want to have forced acceleration. You want to have a sensation that through impact there's a slight deceleration through that impact zone.
Well said, and I hope that Jerry out in San Francisco, I hope that he's tuning into the program live and is receiving all of your great answers. You guys did a fantastic job answering all of the questions. And I have one more question. Believe it or not, our hours is just about up, but I've got one more quick question here, and I think this one we can have a little bit of fun with it. This is one I haven't had before, and this is from Brian from Asheville, North Carolina. And in his email, he mentions that the area that he struggles mostly with is in his putting, and he seems to miss most of his putts below the hole. So his question is very simple: is why do I miss so many putts below the hole? And one of the things that I think that a lot of players have difficulty, especially the higher handicapper, the amateur players, dealing with a breaking putt is, of course, more difficult than straight putts, and subconsciously they want the putts to break less. So one of the things that often you'll see players do is you only really want to look at the last part of your putts roll and sort of avoid the break. And over time, you get an impression that putts generally break less. And I think what happens with a lot of people is they one of two things happens. Either they try to hit through the break a little bit and end up going well past the hole, or they don't read the break properly and or spend too much time reading it and don't give it enough, and ultimately it's going to break even more. So I'm going to end this one here and start with Brenndan first, and then we'll go to Eric, and then Scott, we'll get you to wrap up on this question here. Brenndan?
Yeah, I think you see a lot of amateurs that miss it on the the low side of the hole, where the old saying, when it seems like when the pros miss it, they miss it on the high side. They call it the pro side. But I think a big tendency that I see with amateurs and general players is a couple things. One, speed. Was the speed actually correct? I mean, did he have the right amount of speed for the line? I would think that if you can get the ball to roll within 12 to 14 inches past the hole, and you've got generally good pace. So if it's the type of putt where he putts it and it goes on the low side, but the ball is even with the hole, or just barely past the hole, I think it'd be more of a speed issue. Don't change anything as far as your line, just work on your speed. But then again, if he's missing it on the low side and the ball is rolling out 12, 14, 15, 16 inches past the hole, well, then it's more probably a mechanic issue then, as far as where the face is pointing at impact. So I would just, one tip that I would recommend, if that is the case, is just making sure that your head's not following the putter through impact, because more times than not, on some of these putts, is as soon as the putter goes through impact, from what I've seen, is when the head is moving, it's going straight to where the hole is. And a lot of times, when the head will go straight there, the putter face will go the same direction. So, whether it's a right to left or a left to right putt, wherever the eyes are going to look, the putter face is a lot of times going to want to look the same way. So, if it isn't a speed issue, I would just try to focus on making sure to keep his head down a little bit longer. And like I said, just watch where the speed's, where the ball's finishing up at the hole.
Great answer, Brenndan. Thank you. Eric, let me ask you, let me just expand this just a little bit. Is it possible that, and I'm sure it is, but that a lot of amateurs maybe read a little more break sometimes than what is necessary or what's actually there, and quite often because of that, they're putting a little bit too much emphasis on the break, and therefore not getting it to the hole in the way they should, and falling a little bit short. What are your thoughts, and what are some of the things common things that you see with your students?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Quite frankly, if I'm being honest, when I ask people to show me what they see or to read a putt, a lot of people aren't very good at reading the greens.
Right.
That, I think, has part to do with there's a lot of sort of folklore myth about why the ball should break where it does. That's not really relevant at all. But if I had a guy who came up to me and wanted to get a putting lesson, he told me I'm missing on the low side. But if it's right to left, I'm missing left. If it's left to right, I'm missing right. All the time. I would just tell him to play more break. That to me would be as simple as that. If you constantly are missing on the low side, you have two choices, right? You can change your speed or you can change your break. And if your speed is somewhat good and you're on the low side all the time, well then you need to take whatever amount of break that you think you would normally do and then add more. That would be as simple as that to me. In terms of, I see all kinds of stuff with putting. I like to. I sort of try and break it down into three things. Is A, can you start the ball on the line you want it to start? B, is your speed good? And then C, is your line good? And then green reading is a whole another ball game in itself. But again, if someone misses low all the time, I would say play more break.
Very good. And Scott, we're going to wrap it up with you. Any thoughts on Brian from Asheville, North Carolina? Why he might be struggling a little bit with his putting and hitting it below the hole too many times. What can we do to help him out?
Well, definitely play more break. And speed is priority, though, so I was definitely looking at speed first. Is it missing below the hole because it's only getting to the hole or to the front edge of the hole and taking the break at the last second? And if he could roll it out 2 more inches, would it hold the line? So if there's enough speed and it's still missing below the hole, then we've got to look at either playing more break as number one option, and then number 2, study where the eyes are going in the focus. So a lot of players, they think that the hole is a target on a breaking putt. The hole is not the target. The hole is completely irrelevant. Once you pick that line, and say it's and I'm a line guy, so I pick a spot. I'm a spot line guy, so if I feel that it's going to break a foot, I forget where the hole is, and I pick that spot that's a foot out from the hole that I'm going to play that break to, and that's my new hole. That's my target, and that's right. All I'm going to. And if I pick the line right, and the gravity works the way it should, then it works out. Bonus. Hopefully the speed was good because that was my top priority. And then lastly, just as a drill for him, he wants to look at the top side of the hole as the entry point. So if he put tees all along the bottom 3/4 of the hole, so he practiced putting to a hole that he could only make the putt if it dropped in the top, very top edge, that will refocus his zone in a better place.
Well, somebody said earlier, yeah, exactly, and somebody said earlier, in one of the not only in the putting, but I think said earlier as well, is where the eyes go, the ball is going to follow. And a lot of times I think that happens, especially with the amateur players, but even some of the tour players occasionally make this mistake, not very often at the tour level, but they want to peak a lot. And more often than not, if they're not looking at the top part of the hole, in a case where it's a breaking putt like this, they're looking at the bottom of the hole, and that's where the ball's going to go more often than not. So that's a great tip and a great drill for somebody to do. And Brian, if you're tuning into the program tonight, place those tees around the bottom 3/4 and just leave that area on top open and make that your new target to focus on, and make it so that you can only, as Scott had indicated, drop your putts in that last quarter there, and sort of retrain yourself and refocus. And remember, do that obviously you have to do that on the practice putting green, but that's something to get out and work on as well. Guys, I want to thank you for participating tonight, and we've wrapped up our time here, and I'm going to give you, as promised, a few minutes just to do a quick plug on some of the things that you're working on, and websites and things like that. And Scott, since you finished us off, I'm going to let you start off. Scott, if you want to give a plug here before we go.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate it. For the golfers out there, GrandRapidsGolfLesson.com. I have a plethora of free downloads, free tools that you can acquire, and there's some assessments there to help you assess where your game is at. And, of course, my books, The Game of Golf and the Art of Business, Stop Slicing in 5 Swings, and the 19 Holes of Business Golf Conversation are all on that site as well. That's GrandRapidsGolfLesson.com.
Thank you much, Scott, for being part of Coach's Corner tonight. I know that the audience has enjoyed this new segment since we started it early March, and I get lots of great feedback. And, you know, I think that there's so many areas that makes it very confusing for a lot of people and where they need to go. And obviously I want to encourage the listeners to, you know, visit their local professional, whatever area they might be at. That's where you really need to be focusing on. But I wanted to create a forum, if you will, and there's a lot of great people. Scott, I know you've been on the program before last year to do a segment, and I appreciate you guys giving up your time this evening to spend with my audience, and I know that they appreciate it. I get lots of great feedback all the time. And so, Scott, I appreciate that, and definitely you want to be checking out Scott's website, and I'll give it a further plug a little bit later on the broadcast as well. Eric, if you want to go ahead, I'll let you go next.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Ted. My website is pcgolfcoaching.com. I have a little blog area that I'm getting started on there, trying to spread some good information you can check out. I'm very active on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, not as active, but and on there you can just search for Eric Cogorno. And my email and everything's on the website. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message.
Perfect. And rounding up our trio of professionals tonight, of course, Mr. Brenndan Cooper. Brenndan, go ahead.
Thanks, Ted. Yeah, you know, you can check out chuckEvansGolf.com. We're going to be working on here in the next few months on putting some new videos and a lot of tips on there and some downloads for people to look at and watch and you know, just hopefully try to help people improve their golf game.
Very well said. And gentlemen, again, I want to thank you, and particularly Eric and Brenndan, for coming on such short notice. I appreciate you guys stepping up, and I hope that you'll come back again and participate in some future ones. Of course, Scott, you as well are always welcome to come back. I appreciate your insight. And both of you, I don't know if you've had the pleasure of watching some of the posts that Scott has put up throughout many of the Facebook forums and other social media, but he's a great guy to get to know and has a lot of great tips, not only for the average player out there, but for the professionals as well. Some great business tips, and he's been doing it for a long time. And Scott, I always appreciate your insight and training in that you give my audience. So you're welcome to come back as well anytime. I appreciate that. And when you get your next book coming out, I hope you come back on and do a plug here on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Ted. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Guys, thank you again. I appreciate it for coming on Coach's Corner. And that wraps up another segment tonight. And I'm going to move on to my next my guest, Mr. Mancil Davis, who's going to talk about the 51 holes in one that he has recorded through his career. Guys, thank you very much for being part of the Coach's Corner segment. And I look forward to having you guys back on again. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Ted.
All right, thanks, Ted.
All right, guys. Okay, that was Mr. Scott Seifferlein, Mr. Eric Cogorno, and Mr. Brenndan Cooper joining us here for Coach's Corner on this Thursday night. We're always live every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, going through to 8 p.m. And I'm just waiting for my final guest of the evening, Mr. Mancil Davis, who is the Director of Golf for the National Hole-in-One Association. And as soon as he contacts into the program, we'll get him on here. But just in the meantime, let me remind everybody that if you want to join in on the conversation, you're welcome to do so anytime. You can call in at area code 646-716-4667. And you can tune in live every Thursday, as I said, at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on blogtalkradio.com. You just go to the link and you can type in Golf Talk Live up in the search button, or you can just do it as a completed link at www.blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, and it'll take you right to the show that particular evening. And if you happen to miss any of the live performances, if you go to the blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live website link at any time after the program, you can go visit the on-demand section and listen to the recorded version at any point. And don't forget to follow me on Facebook, the program at Golf Talk Live blog, and follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO.
I see that my next guest is ready and willing to come on the program. And let me just, again, remind you that this gentleman has quite an accomplishment. Not only has he played on the PGA, been a member of the PGA of America since 1974, but he's played on the tour briefly in 75 and 76 before focusing on as a club professional career in 1977. And Mancil has served as the director of golf at the Woodlands Country Club, which was the former site of the PGA Houston Open, and the Trophy Club in Roanoke, Texas, and the resort at Squaw Creek in Lake Tahoe, California. Also, he is the director of golf at the National Hole-in-One Association. And would you welcome my very special guest this evening, Mancil Davis. Good evening, Mancil, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. This is Ted.
Ted, it is a pleasure to be on. I've enjoyed listening a little bit, waiting to go on the air. What a great show.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I've been this has been a long time coming. We made these arrangements many moons ago, and finally this day has arrived. And when I was looking through some of the information that was sent over to me, I was not aware quite of your record. And I've got to ask, before we get into some of the questions, the first and foremost question is, how the heck did you get 51 hole-in-ones?
I'd be a millionaire if I could have a dime for every time I've been asked that. I think it's one of those records, number one, Ted, that somebody has to have, and I'm very blessed and very fortunate and very proud to have it. The truth is, I was always a very good iron player. I know that over the years, as they started to accumulate, and I was, getting closer to the world record. I think this was back in the early 80s. I think I broke Art Wall's record in 1983, I think it was. But in 81 or 2, Sports Illustrated did not an article explicitly on me, but I was part of it about holes in one. And I'd always said that on a par 3, if I were hitting a 6 or 7 iron, that something was mentally different on that par 3 tee shot with the 6 or 7 iron than it was hitting that same club from the fairway on a second or third shot on a par 4 or par 5. And I really couldn't describe it, but I knew it was something completely different. And we were in Austin, Texas. I was helping build a golf course there, and they had sports psychologists and some doctors, and all they really measured were brain waves. And we spent 3 days, I guess it was, and I said, well, number one, I aim at the hole, which sounds silly, but that's what I do. When I'm on a par 3, first of all, I'm a big believer in visualization. I think you have to see a shot before you can, attempt to hit it. I think you have to see it from start to finish. And for some reason on par 3s, it's, in today's language, it's like I'm seeing it in HD television. In the old days, I would just call it I could see it in color. And on the other holes, everything was in black and white. It was that much of a difference. But I seemed to visualize, and that was my ultimate target. If the shot required I remember doing a thing with NBC television at the Houston Open here at the Woodlands in the early years, and I was interviewed on my 18th grade. Bruce Devlin and Charlie Jones was still with them, but they said, how do you make a hole-in-one? And I was young, and I went, well, I aim at the hole, and I don't use a tee. And I caught a lot of flack. Bruce Devlin goes, you always use a tee. And I was young enough and on national TV, and I said, well, I've made at the time, 32 holes in one. And, my thought is, why would I use a tee 4 times around with an iron when I don't use it on every other iron shot? And I based that primarily on what I saw over the years, in the Pro-Ams and doing my King of Aces outings. An amateur, a lot of times when they do tee it up on par 3s, they tend to tee it too high. And so it's a unique shot for them versus any other swing they make with a 4 or 5 or 6 iron. But as it turned out, my brain waves on par 3s were completely unique from every other golf swing I made during a round of golf. And it was nothing more than when they compared them to other golfers on some research, my brain waves on par 3s were comparable to yours, let's say, on a 40 or 50-foot putt. That was still your ultimate target somehow, was the hole. Right. You were focused on that. And somehow, I guess I started making them early at age 11 and stayed on a little run there for many years. And I guess for some reason I was able to take that, from 40 feet to 80 feet to 100 to whatever. And The aiming at the hole, I will say this, Ted, I've hit some ugly shots that went in.
Well, there's always a little bit of luck mixed in. Let me just quickly read just a couple of the stats, and then, as I said, we'll get on to some questions. But you've made a hole-in-one virtually with every club in the bag, except, of course, the putter, pitching wedge, and the sand wedge. The longest hole-in-one you made to date was 379 yards, obviously par 4. Shortest hole-in-one was 124 yards. 8 holes-in-one in a single year. I mean, that's just mind-boggling in itself, never mind the 51. 3 holes-in-one in a single week. I mean, those are just phenomenal stats. And you've made at least 1 hole-in-one per year between 1967 and 1987. And, of course, you've been featured in Golf Digest, Golf Magazine, Sports Illustrated, People, Guinness Book of World Records, and, of course, Ripley's Believe It or Not. That I can believe in itself. I mean, you have to be in there right in the front. But you're also the director of golf for the National Hole-in-One Association, and that's been around since 1981, and we'll call it the NHIOA for short, just because I'm going to get winded here for reading it out all the time. Of course, it's the world's largest provider of hole-in-one insurance, and it's celebrating its 25th anniversary, so happy anniversary. And, of course, it provides hole-in-one insurance for more than well over 350,000 events worldwide, and has paid out more than $60 million. You've traveled the world, of course, as director of golf for the NHIOA, providing charity and corporate golf events, and with your, of course, unique character and obviously hole-in-one packages that range from anywhere from $10,000 to $1 million. And I can't think of a greater spokesperson than to promote the NHIOA than somebody that's got 51 aces under their belt. Just phenomenal.
I was truly blessed, Ted. In 1981, by the name of John Everhart, and it was almost a fluke situation. John had been a up-and-coming and very successful young insurance agent and started his own company and was doing quite well, but he was on the tournament committee for his local country club's member guest. And it was so simple as somebody said, this is probably, I want to say 79 or maybe 80, early 80 when this happened. And they said, hey, John Everhart, you're in the insurance business. I played a tournament in Palm Springs a few weeks ago, and they had a new Cadillac on a hole for a hole-in-one on a par 3. Is that even possible? Is that something insured? Because that was a rarity. You never saw that. Yeah. And John, being inquisitive, the true entrepreneur to begin with, but he went, wait a minute, and he started checking around, and in a synopsis, what happened, there was one smaller company in California at the time that they were writing policies, and then Lloyd's of London was writing policies for hole-in-one insurance, but John, as an avid golfer already at that time, realized that the premiums were ridiculously high and really not affordable for other than the exclusive facilities and events, and saw, a potential for something unique. I was very fortunate. They came up with the idea. He brought in a gentleman by the name of Parker Smith, who had been with Golf Magazine for many, many years, as his marketing director for some short time as they got the company started, and they were looking for a face on the brochure, so to speak, or a spokesperson. And truthfully, they went to Art Wall, who I don't know if you're old enough. Art Wall held the PGA World Record for holes-in-ones at 41 forever and ever and ever, and it was assumed it was one of those records that would never be broken. And they had meetings with Mr. Wall, and it just did not work out financially, and they didn't feel it was a good mix from a personality standpoint. You're probably familiar with a gentleman by the name of Skip Bayless, who at that time was a writer for the Dallas paper. Now he's with ESPN and various networks, but I had made an ace on that 379-yard hole, which, by the way, I hit it about 260. It's a horseshoe dogleg, but he wrote just a very beautiful article making it sound better than it was, and they happened to see it, and they said, let's call this guy. I just become director of golf at the Woodlands, and they said, fly to Dallas. We'd like to talk to you about a new venture we're starting, and they are the ones that named me King of Aces. I mean, it was literally a promotional vehicle or title when we started the company, and I've just been honored and, like I said, blessed to be part of it from the beginning. And from what was a rarity in a golf tournament at that time
right.
in 1981 when they started. I mean, Ted, you play a lot of tournaments, corporate charity.
Sure.
I mean, it's almost expected now. I mean, it's not the curiosity, but it's still, that's the beauty of it. It adds so much excitement to a round of golf in a charity or corporate event.
Yeah, and that is so true, Mancil. That's a very valid point, because, when I watch, obviously you may have gathered or may have known ahead of time, but I'm originally from Canada, and of course migrated south on a permanent basis here because I got tired of shoveling the snow. But when I was growing up, of course, our PGA event up there was the Canadian Open. And I grew up, of course, watching Nicklaus and Trevino and that era. And, as much as I enjoyed going to the golf tournaments, when you saw one of these guys get an ace, I mean, the crowds just went crazy. And, it was just something to see. And especially, in that time, it was not something that, nowadays it seems to be happening with more rarity, but or more, more opportunity. But, back then it was something that was not as common, that you didn't see as much or certainly hear about. And
and you hit it dead on the head right there. You didn't hear about it as much.
Right. And that's what I'm sure, obviously, if you went back in the archives and pulled everybody's, that played in the PGA and so forth back in the day, I'm sure that if you look at the scorecards, there was probably plenty of them, but it was just not talked about as much as it is now. And you're right. Whether it be a corporate event or a PGA Tour event or LPGA event, nothing gets the crowds going more than when somebody, sinks that ace. And that just sort of gets the players' juices going, and it gets the crowd going, and they're looking, okay, well, who's next? So it's just a great thing. Let me ask you some questions here, obviously.
Sure.
You explained, of course, a little bit how the NHI OA got started in that, but let's talk it from an average person's. Does anyone really ever make a hole-in-one and win big prizes? And I'm, of course, talking more in the corporate and amateur end of it as opposed to the professionals. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, that's truly the reason for the success of the company, and I think when you get to the bottom line, I think that's what John Everhart recognized early on. This will be nice for larger tour events and all that, but this has a place in the one-day local charity event, the one-day corporate event, the employee outings, because, Ted, you and I both know this, golf is the only sport that I'm aware of that, okay, you talk about watching a hole-in-one or hearing of hole-in-ones at the Canadian Open growing up, or we see one on TV. There was one on this last weekend. One gentleman made two, or one of the ladies last week on the LPGA made two aces the same week, and we get excited about it. But what other sport, I can't think of what other sport can a 32 handicapper or a 18 or somebody that's never even played hit one golf shot that cannot be bettered by the greatest players in the world. And that's what happens in these golf tournaments. I was shocked, and we've insured millions and millions of shots, Ted, over the years. Our average ace maker is almost it's 18.7. So, I mean, when I travel, I mean, somebody, they may not know me as Mancil Davis, but they know me as the king of aces or the guy with all the holes in one. I'll be on a plane, and we'll start talking, and when somebody, an amateur golfer particularly, which you're speaking of right now, if they've made a hole-in-one, whether it's at a tournament, buddies, or at a local club event, their eyes brighten up, their faces glow. It's like they're talking about their kid or their grandkid. They will describe their shot in vivid detail. And I've heard more hole-in-one stories probably than anybody in the world, and I love every one of them. And, to answer your question, it's not just the best players. I mean, that's one of the reasons you mentioned the figure earlier that National Hole-in-One has paid out well over $60 million. I mean, and these are some of those, yes. I mean, Tom Kite won $1 million. Freddie Couples won Lincoln. I mean, we've had several $1 million winners, most of those from the tour, but we've also had, I believe the last count from National Hole-in-One is 5 or 6 golfers from just Average Golfer USA, a charity or whatever, putting on $1 million shootout. I don't know. It's just the one sport that, for that one brief moment, one good swing, one lucky bounce, you can get a shot that, Phil Mickelson can't do any better than. And that's what I think is the exciting part. And what I love about, having a hole-in-one prize on the tournaments is, a lot of times you go out and you're playing, typically in a charity event, you're doing it to support the sponsor and the charity, and you're playing because you want to. It's a great community outreach. And sometimes we just don't have the kind of day we want, but, once or twice, or in our case, we ensure we have prizes for all 4 par 3s. Even if you just have a big prize on one hole, we have what we call bonus prizes on the other par 3 holes. So no matter how the round's going, 4 times during that day, you're going to draw it back with a chance to, John Everhart named it appropriately. He calls it golf's most coveted shot, and they'll remember it for a lifetime.
Well, and let me just add too, you're exactly right here. It's really the only sport that the average person can identify with the best of the best in the world. In baseball, most people will never get to the level of some of the top players. They can certainly throw a pitch, or they can hit a home run, but they're not going to get to the same level, unless they have that sort of God-given gift. The hole-in-one experience is something that not only the greatest players that have ever played the game, many have accomplished, but it's something the average person out there can say, okay, I may not make it to the Masters tournament or play in the U.S. Open, but I got a hole-in-one just like, so-and-so did, or maybe I got 2 holes in one in my lifetime so far, and that's better than somebody else. And so there's that comparison, there's identification that, hey, I'm sort of part of that special club. It's like a club, and everybody wants to sort of feel like they belong and have that sort of camaraderie. And you're right, golf is really one of the only sports that I know of where you can share that experience with some of the best people that play the sport, and you can't do that with many of the others.
I can't, I guess bowling would be the only thing I can even think of. It's, there are 300 scores rolled occasionally. But even with that, when you go back and look at it, the professional bowlers are doing it on lanes that are oiled, prepared differently. But a hole-in-one, other than the speed of the greens, from a 150-yard hole-in-one or 165 or whatever it is, whether it's Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson or Annika Sorenstam or BJ, it doesn't matter. Yep. In the old days, it would have been Mo Norman from in Canada. I played with on the old Peter Jackson tour up there. But the conditions are identical. It's you, the golf ball, the golf club, and a hole that's the same size for you as it is for those guys and gals.
Exactly. Let me ask you, a question here. If I was running a tournament and wanted to add a hole-in-one prize, is it a lot of work and effort to get the event properly insured, or what's the procedure?
That's the beauty of it. Not only I can even do it on computer, but it's as simple as one phone call, and that's what it used to scare people away. I think, well, it's going to cost too much. It's going to be out to get all these pieces of information. Ted, it's as simple as one phone call to NHIOA, one of our incredible customer service representatives. They answer, and they're going to ask you just a couple of, what's the date of the tournament? What's the name of the golf course? We'll probably have it on our computer's program already. We'll say, which hole do you want to insure? You say number 13. And basically the only criteria is we need to know the length of the hole, the number of shots being hit, and the cash value of the prize. And that's it. And we give you a quote immediately over the phone. Our prices include beautiful full-color custom signs for not only the target hole, but as I mentioned earlier, every other par 3 has fantastic prizes associated with it. You pay the premium. The signs arrive to the golf course if that's where you want it. They're set up. It's easy. You're insured. All you have to do is put a witness on the tee box, and call us when somebody makes it. And we're number one in the world for a reason. We take care of the claims immediately, and that's you referenced the number earlier. That's why we've paid out well over $60 million. We pretty much have a winner out pretty much every day somewhere around the world. So it's a phone call. Right. Give us 3 pieces of information, and you'll have a quote on the phone You can pay by credit card at that point, and you're basically done until hopefully on the golfer and tournament's behalf, somebody makes an ace. And even if they don't, here's the kicker. Those golfers leave that golf course going, I didn't play good today, but, hey, how about that car they had on number 13? Or did you see what the prize was? It was $50,000 cash, or the boats or the jet skis. We insure a cash value. You can't imagine some of the crazy prizes, Ted. We actually insured his and hers caskets at a mortician's convention. I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Larry Gatlin, great singer. He and the Gatlin brothers.
Right.
They had an incredible celebrity charity event for muscular dystrophy in the Dallas area for many, many years. In one year at Larry's tournament, the prize was just the most beautiful Arabian stallion. This is back when the Arabian business was really big, but about an $80,000 horse. And they actually had the horse on the tee box in a portable corral. And, people talked about it for weeks and weeks and weeks after the tournament. So the sponsors, they garner a lot. Even it's not just a 4-hour, 5-hour event. People talked about it before, during, and after the event for days and days, weeks and weeks.
Well, and also, too, the funny thing is about that is even if you don't have somebody that wins the particular hole, they're going to talk about it, but you can sure as guns bet that if somebody aces that hole and wins the big prize, what better publicity can you get for your tournament for next year? Because that guy would be telling anybody.
You can imagine. This is a true story. I've got a newspaper editor here I live at the Woodlands, just outside of Houston, where I helped host the Houston Open for 25 years, which actually they're here this week, just at a different golf course these days, but down the road. And they started today. But I've got the publisher of the paper here, and he was one of those guys that just loved charity events, helped promote them, played in every one, took a team. After 45 years, he made his first ace ever, and it happened to be on a hole that awarded a brand new BMW. That was 5 years ago. And I promise you, if you run into him at the golf course tomorrow, somehow in that conversation, he's going to work it in that, I made a hole-in-one over at the Jeff Maggart, Doug Drapeck Memorial charity golf tournament, and, I won the BMW. I'm talking after 5 years. He talks about it every day. So it's that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, the car might even be traded in by now, but he's still talking about it,
Oh, yeah. The car's, I guarantee the car's gone. But in his mind, he won it yesterday. And that's just an ongoing support, recognition, and excitement for the charity that puts the tournament on, for the sponsor that helped write the hole-in-one policy, for the players that participated. So I would not run. I can't even imagine running a charity or corporate event these days without including at least a hole-in-one prize on one of the holes. And there's a lot more you can do beyond that even.
Right. And that's the thing. And there's so many other celebrities and sports figures who have gravitated to golf. And, of course, some of the ones that come to mind, Michael Jordan comes to mind, Charles Barkley, and some of the other from basketball end of it, and obviously a lot of great baseball players and football players from the NFL. Once their time has passed in their respective sports, they all sort of gravitate to golf. And if you look at a lot of the players that came from other sports and have gone on to do their own charity events, they always have a hole-in-one because it's just such a huge draw. It brings excitement to the tournament, which ultimately brings excitement to the specific charity that they're covering, and it's just a great thing. What are some of the other? Sorry, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is it's also not only adding the excitement level is number one, because you want that. There are, as you're well aware, there are so many thousands and thousands of charity golf tournaments in the U.S. and Canada each year around the world. But even in one central location, the same sponsors same people are being asked to play. The same people are being asked to sponsor. So they're looking for something unique for their sponsorship dollar, number one. So what we found over the years, and this is where I think John's original vision was, you've got your entry fees, you've sold the tee signs like every other tournament's done, and you've got the bronze and golds and all these sponsors. But now the hole-in-one hole is another revenue sponsor source for the tournaments. You sell that as a package. So
Right.
It brings in additional dollars before the first shot is ever hit. And that's one of the promotions, as I said, that we just talked about. It goes on forever and ever.
So in addition to, obviously, the NHIOA obviously doesn't just ensure prizes for the rounds, or are there some other options for hole-in-one prize? What are some of the other things that you offer?
Well, this goes back. We got very creative after just when we first opened, because it was a pilot program in '81, and just little things. First of all, the original policies were for the first ace, it won the car, it won the cash. Well, within less than a year, we ran into a situation where the fairly prominent member guest players made a hole-in-one on the same hole, 45 minutes apart. Well, the first guy's really happy because he has the car. The second guy, something that should be very special, he's told, well, no, there's no card. He goes, well, wait a minute, I paid the same entry fee as he did. Yeah. You advertised the car. So John Everhart we were the first ever to go to prize restoration. So, first and foremost, if there are 5 aces on that target hole during a round of golf, National Hole-in-One's paying all 5 contestants to bag the ace. The second thing we did is, early days, if you insured it at 165 yards, it didn't recognize male, female, whatever. So all of a sudden a lady comes up and you have to say, well, you have to play from here. Well, no, they don't. My tee's up there at 104. No, you got to play from here to win the car. Well, it, again, turned a great thing into bad. John said, women play the women's tees. This has only been about 6 months ago. We had a lady at a member guest tournament win a $10,000 cash prize because their regular tee marker was at 89 yards, and she hit like a 7-iron in the hole. But we started looking for things to make it even more unique. And once the round of golf is over, as you've played in thousands of them probably, but charity and corporate events, the round is over, and you typically go in. If you tee it off in the morning, you've got a luncheon and the award presentation. If you tee it off at noon or 1, you've got dinner and awards. And I've always felt as though we needed something to keep the excitement going. And what we came up with, our first endeavor, was we came up with putting contests. So it's not necessarily a hole-in-one. You can actually insure a 50-foot putt now, and we've done, large amounts. We wanted even to add to that. We wanted something unique at the end of a round, and what we came up with was a post-event, or we called it the scoreboard shootout, to encourage everybody, whether they played bad or indifferent, to make sure you come on in. We would take the 4 guys or gals that were closest to the hole in the 4 par 3s, and while everybody's having a soft drink or an adult beverage, while they're waiting to post the scores, we would take those 4 people out to the nearest green in front of the clubhouse or scoreboard in the fairway, and they would all 4 hit a shot, and for $1 million or $100,000. And what we even evolved from that is I started on the events that I do my King of Aces outing at, to make certain everybody comes in. I don't even do the closest. I do a random draw after the round is over for the 4 golfers. They're going to take the $100,000 or $1 million shot. It just all it changes is the insurance. But everybody gathers around that green with their beverage of choice, and they're all excited. And this is where the putting thing has just become, to me, pivotal in a successful event, that they're going to leave that parking lot going, this is incredible. I close my outings in a day of golf with that one final stroke. Whoever's closest among the 4 in the $1 million shot, or once again a random draw, I let one golfer take a 50-foot putt in front of everybody to signify the day of golf is over. We're going inside for dinner and awards. 50 feet, they can it, they win $10,000. Now, who among us, I don't care what your handicap is, how many times have you sit and watched television on Saturday or Sunday and you've seen somebody over a putt that's worth $10,000 or $100,000 or a victory? And we can't relate to that, but the putting part of it has just been so exciting, and those happen more frequently than you can possibly imagine. I mean, our very first event, John Everhart did a lot of actuarial study before he came out with it, and our very first insured event was a member guest event again in Dallas, Texas, and they insured the one team, a member and his guest, it was a $25,000 putt from 50 feet. The very first putt ever insured by National Hole-in-One went to the bottom of the cup. So on the first roll, we lost $25,000, and then the guest left it about 2 inches dead short. I mean, it was just an auspicious beginning, but, John Everhart is a smart man. He knew it's still numbers. I mean, they happen, but they happen with some relative frequency, and you have to learn how to calculate that, obviously.
Yeah, and the putting aspect is interesting because, going back to your hole-in-ones, one of the challenges with that from a player standpoint, I'm talking, of course, the amateur, is not everybody is maybe going to hit it solid and let's say, 165-yard shot. You might be able to take half the field out that's not going to be able to be accurate. But a putt, that sort of brings everybody back into the fold again, because most people can, again, some are better than others, but it brings it back into that challenge. It makes it a little bit on even a fair playing field, even in the members, because some players are not going to be hitting the ball as solid on that long shot, so you're going to eliminate some of the people. But by bringing the putting now into the challenge, you now open up that door again to maybe a 25 handicapper that, again, isn't going to ace the hole, but they've now got that 50-foot putt for a chance at 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever the case may be, or 10,000.
And the putting doesn't even really have to be. We do it with non-golfers. We try again. If you think about it, again, we've provided the charity with additional sponsor opportunities. You sell the putting contest, the putting shot. You sell the post-event shootout. I mean, and we've actually got groups now that, instead of the full-blown, because we wanted to come up with alternatives, as golf got more expensive, but some of the groups said, well, we're having a hard time finding enough players that want to, can go spend 5 or 6 or 7 hours for the golf and the dinner and the luncheon or whatever. And I've got groups now around the country that, in lieu of a tournament occasionally, they'll have a nice hors d'oeuvre, and they usually do it in the afternoons or evenings with cocktails and soft drinks, and you gather around the veranda or whatever, and they literally they have, everybody that shows up and signs up, they charge them an entry fee just like the tournament, but you utilize one of the holes very near the clubhouse where everybody can see it, and you can sit there and be eating their hors d'oeuvres or whatever, or full-scale dinners and watching the golfers hit. And I did one recently for a women's shelter, and what they did was had a beautiful veranda. All the people were up there. The contestants had already paid their money. As they would arrive, we'd drive them down to a designated tee area there on the 18th fairway. They would hit back toward the crowd, and all of those got shots for those were $10,000 swings. And then as we measured as we went throughout, and we ended up with 10 players. Those 10 players went out for the $1 million shot, and then we obviously concluded it with the $10,000 putt. They even ran the putting. They ran it as a putting contest, as a qualifier throughout the day, where people paid X number of dollars, and they had about a 50-foot putt, and they ended up taking the closest, 8 people, and those people had a little putt off to get it down to one person, because putting is obviously more expensive per attempt, but it's all in the fundraising and creating a unique opportunity is how to get down to that one golfer for the $10,000 putt or the $1 million shot. But in that very first event, we did what we called non-traditional. I had a lawyer bag the ace in front of the big crowd and immediately turned, and they were saying, you just won $10,000. He says, I'm giving it to the women's shelter, and then he almost made the $1 million shot. So it just literally, back to the fact that there are so many tournaments now, you've got to separate your tournament from all the others. And most of them have a hole-in-one prize. Make yours unique. Make it special. I've been encouraging the charities, in many cases, to make their hole-in-one prizes a cash value, and right up in front of everybody. If it's $20,000 or $10,000 or $100,000 for the hole-in-one, say $10,000 ace. Ace maker gets $5,000, muscular dystrophy gets $5,000, or whatever the charity is. And the golfers, they know on the front end, they're tickled to death. And with the cash prize now, the charity just has an additional opportunity to raise the monies that are so critical to their causes and concerns. So I try and get everybody involved. Now, I don't know of another win-win-win. The golfers love it, the charity loves it, the sponsors love it.
Yeah, and that's really something that I think that is great for the game, because, again, as I said earlier, not everybody can play at the top level, and this is a great way to feel part of you're doing something good for charity, of course, but this is a way to kind of identify with some of the better players out there. Especially if you're successful and you get that hole in one, you can say, wow, I've done something that that the pros have done, and it kind of works you into their sort of level.
I mean, I did it. I was very, very honored. I met Mr. Ben Hogan when I was 12 years old, and later, one of my earlier director. I was director of golf at the Trophy Club outside of Dallas, which was the only golf course Mr. Hogan ever designed. But I knew Mr. Hogan personally, and I'd been told from day one that here, arguably one of the greatest golfers in the world, certainly one of the greatest shot makers in the world, had never made a hole-in-one. And I must have done 2,000 interviews, because it's one of the questions that, well, why do you think you have so many? And I said, well, it's odd because, best ball striker in the world, Ben Hogan, never had one. Well, Golf Digest was doing a feature on holes in one, and I was listed. I'd broken the world record by this time when they were listing everybody. And a writer from Golf Digest was listed before Mr. Hogan died, about 2 years before he died. But they got a hold of him and said, we find it unbelievable that you've never made a hole in one. And Hogan stopped him in mid-sentence and said, that's not true. He said, I've made two. And I loved his next line. He didn't say I might have, should have. He said, I would have made more had I aimed at the flag. He said, but I aimed at a position on the green affording the best birdie opportunity. So I changed my interviews to, thank God Mr. Hogan was a practical soul, or he would probably have the record.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, just fascinating to me. So you take a 20 handicapper who might have three aces, or if they have two, then go, I got the same as Ben Hogan. I got one more than Ben Hogan. What other sport can you say that in? You can't.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't happen.
And that's what we alluded to earlier. How can the folks out there that want to get more information on the NH?
It's very simple. We've got it's a toll-free number. It's 877-527-6944. Or if they don't even want to talk to anybody, we've got a magnificent website, and it's hard to remember. It's HIO.com. Hole-in-one.com, HIO.com. You can get quotes on the computer, right there online. You can have a live chat with one of our we got an incredible crew there. Any question you have about it, they'll be able to answer it because, we've insured, as you mentioned early in the program, we've insured, we're getting close to, I'm guessing we'll be close to 400,000 events by the end of the year. And wow. We've already addressed, John's had to write a lot of checks. So,
sure.
But, it's back to our early part. It's so easy. It's a phone call or get online, and you're done, because that's the last thing you want to stress over. If you're a tournament director, you're worried about pairings and meals and tee times, and get the hole-in-one done. You're finished with it. Everything arrives before your tournament, and on the tournament's behalf, they hope they're picking up the phone on Monday afternoon or evening or whatever day the tournament's on, calling our office in Dallas, Texas, going, we have a winner. And believe me, the phones do ring there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, hopefully one of these days I'll be ringing that phone and collecting my $1 million hole-in-one prize. I'm a little farther behind.
I've got to ask the question. Have you ever had a hole-in-one?
I've actually had two. I had well, that's what I said. I'm a little further. I've got 49 more to go just to tie you, so I've got to work on it. And I just turned 50
go easy on me. I don't play much anymore, But, quick, okay, do you remember the shots vividly?
You know what? The first one, believe it or not, I don't as much. But the second one, and I'm surprised because I would have thought it would have been the other way around. But the first one, I was very, very young. I was probably maybe about 12 or 13, and I was playing with my father at the time, and we were playing at a course in Ancaster, Ontario, which is just outside of Hamilton. Probably about less than an hour from the border. And I remember playing there, and it was on of course a par 3, and I hit the shot, and I didn't realize because it was an elevated green. We didn't realize at first that it had gone in, and so of course we were looking around the green. I didn't expect. I thought I'd flown the green, and we're looking around, and about 2 minutes later, my father turns to me and he says, "I think you better come here." He said, "I found your ball," and it was in the cup. But I do remember my second one. I was probably, I guess I'm probably going to be in, I think it was either 26 or 27 years old at the time, and I was playing with some friends of mine, and we played a par 3 at another course up in Ontario, and it was probably about 155 yards, and there was a tree that ran. I don't know why they did this, but it was an old tree that they had right in front of the green, and you either had one of two choices. You either had an extremely high shot to go over it, or you faded or drew the ball around. And I drew the ball around, and I actually hit the flag about midstream, and it just dropped into the hole. And I thought for sure I was going to, because I hit such a hard shot, I knew I was going to go over the green if it didn't hit that flag, and it dropped in. And needless to say, my playing partner's chin dropped when we got up there and it was in the cup. But
the golf gods
it
were
wasn't
smiling.
really. It wasn't an exciting, as glamorous as some of the shots I've seen on tour, but it was certainly right up there in my books. And
well, the bottom line is
you
got to put a number 1 in that square on the scorecard. I don't care how you
I've
did
got
it.
that.
And nobody can do better than that.
And funny enough, that was what we talked about I talked about for weeks and weeks, and ultimately I didn't win the round, but that sort of superseded the winner's game anyway. So that sort of took the conversation. Yes. But that's the fun of it. It's like you say, for a fleeting moment, you feel like you're the number one player in the world because you've done something that the pros have done, and it's just a great feeling. But Mancil, I want to thank you for coming on Golf Talk Live tonight and sharing not only about the NHIOA, the National Hole-in-One Association, but also share a little bit about some of your accomplishments, and just keep at it. Keep getting out there and playing, and see if you can get a few more holes in one.
Well, I will try that, and I will look forward to hearing of your next ace, because I got a feeling after this you're going to make another one. That's my gut right now. And, I do a lot of radio shows around the world, and I always enjoy it, but this has been a delight, by the way. I've enjoyed being on the show and appreciate you having us on.
Well, I appreciate it, and I will be more than happy to continue to plug the NHIOA and get more tournaments. I know a lot of people that have different tournaments and so forth out there that for charity, and I'm certainly going to make sure that I direct them to the NHIOA for sure to get their hole-in-one in order, and keep hitting them straight and keep hitting them long, but more importantly, keep hitting them in the cup.
I appreciate you, my friend. You hit them straight, and take care.
All right. Thank you very much, and you have a great evening, and you're welcome to come back on Golf Talk Live anytime.
I'll look forward to it, Ted. Good night.
All right. Have a great evening, Mancil.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was my very special guest, the King of Aces, Mr. Mancil Davis. Of course, 51 official holes in one. It's a PGA world record. And, of course, he's been featured in Golf Digest, Sports Illustrated, People Magazine, Guinness Book of World Records, of course, and, of course, Ripley's Believe It or Not. Just a great man, and we've been talking here on Golf Talk Live for the last little while, and he's the Director of Golf for the National Hole-in-One Association out in Dallas, Texas. And if you want to get more information on that organization, you can visit their website at www.hio.com. Thank you, Mancil, for being part of Golf Talk Live this evening. And before I wrap up, I just got a few minutes more here before we close the program. I just want to very quickly remind everybody that next Tuesday, this coming April 8th, and I guess I got less time than I thought I did, April 8th, I'll be joined on our other network, the Women of Golf program, starting April 8th at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be joined by none other than LPGA professional Cindy Miller. She'll be co-hosting the Golf Talk Live program, Women of Golf, and we're going to have a very, very special guest. You want to make sure that you tune in, and the link for that is I'm going to be posting that throughout the network, but it's blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf. You want to make sure you tune in every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday beginning April 8th. That's next Tuesday, and we'll be having a great guest, a veteran from the LPGA Tour, and a very, very great lady. I'm looking forward to having her come on the program. And, of course, Cindy and I are going to have a great time doing this new show, The Women of Golf. And we're going to have some great players from the LPGA Tour, and, of course, some great teaching professionals from the LPGA as well are going to be coming on each and every week. And, of course, another great friend and great lady is Barbara Gutstadt, who is, of course, a guest of Golf Talk Live just before the end of the year. She was on, I believe it was the December 19th show, and she has founded the Women's Travel and Concierge business, and it's a great business. We're going to be featuring her as well on the Women of Golf, so you want to make sure you tune in for that. Each and every week we'll be having a special segment for her. But I want to also thank all of you, the listeners worldwide, for faithfully tuning into Golf Talk Live each week. I have certainly a pleasure and enjoyment of having some great and highly talented coaches, teaching professionals, and, of course, some authors and entrepreneurs stop by the program, and some great people as well, like Mancil Davis, who I'm still scratching my head trying to figure out how he got 51 holes in one, and maybe he'll come back on and share the secret to his success with us again in the future. But I appreciate all you guys coming on. I appreciate all the listeners tuning in each and every week and supporting Golf Talk Live, and you've helped to make this a first-class show. And I want to give a special thanks to some of the sponsors and supporters of the program, Mr. Jonathan Laird, of course, of South Coast Golf Guide. Great publication here in the southeastern part of the United States, but you can get a copy of his guide virtually anywhere. Visit the website southcoastgolfguide.com to find out how you can get a copy of the guide. And if you're interested, if you're in the golf industry and you're interested in maybe advertising in Jonathan's publication, it's a great publication here in the Southeast. You can email Jonathan at southcoastgolfguide.com. And he and I are going to be working on a new segment as well, adding to the Golf Talk Live family. We're going to be doing some great course reviews and talking about some of the great courses here in the southeastern part of the United States, and bringing that information to you guys out there in the golfing world so you can come and play some of the great courses down here in the southeastern part. Also want a special thank you to Meredith Kirk of Meredith Kirk Golf, and, of course, the Endless Golf Myrtle Beach magazine, for your support and the program as well. And she was also crowned the 2014 Mrs. South Carolina, and she is making her way to the Mrs. USA, I believe, coming up in August. So congratulations again, Meredith, and much continued success and good luck coming up for the Mrs. USA. And also to some great supporters of the program, friends, Nikki and Tiffany Litherland, for help spreading the word about the show each and every week. And, of course, my good friend, Mr. Bernie Pinder from Ontic Golf, who's been on the program as well many times. Thank you, Bernie, for always supporting the program. And he's got a great line of custom-designed putters that you need to check out at onticgolf.com. And also, lastly, but certainly not least, Mr. Peter Doyle of Doyle Golf Solutions, my good friend over in Ireland. Make sure that you visit him. He's all over Facebook and much of the social media, and you can visit him on his website as well, Doyle Golf Solutions. I just want to thank, again, my guest panel this evening, Scott Seifferlein, Eric Cogorno, and, of course, Mr. Brenndan Cooper. Thank you very much for pitching in on the Coach's Corner tonight. Thanks, guys, for stopping by. And, of course, my special guest from the National Hole-in-One Association, Mr. Mancil Davis. Thank you for stopping by and sharing some great stories and how you can add some zip to your golf tournament. Thank you, guys, for tuning in. Have a great week, and I will see you here next Thursday on Golf Talk Live at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on blogtalkradio.com. And don't forget, April 8th, which is Tuesday, coming up, to tune into the new program as part of the Golf Talk Live team, the Women of Golf, starting April 8th, every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on blogtalkradio.com, the Women of Golf. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great week.